So I'm the group organizer, Vern Bell, and the founder of the Safe Investments or Safe Investing Meetup Group. I'm also a longtime user of LinkedIn. So if you take a quick look here we go. So this is just an idea. I've got 8,588 first level connections, which is quite a lot. I've been at this for a very long time, and I basically built my business through LinkedIn. I don't know if my picture is showing here or not, but I'm going to go ahead and turn this camera off. So there you go. In any event, yeah, my business is Texas Elite Advisory, which is a fee-only registered investment advisory. This is a lot different from most of the people who do this kind of work. In that I do not take money for commissions or any back-end 12B1 fees or anything like that. Strictly work with my clients on a fee basis to assist them. And that fee is generally a percentage of assets under management. So I'm highly motivated to keep costs low and to see the assets grow. And in a nutshell, that's why I started this group. Just exactly why I started the LinkedIn Safe Investments Group many years ago. I have to have relationships with people in order to grow my business. Nobody's gonna work with an advisor that they don't know, and they certainly should not do so. My history in the last 10, 12 years, maybe even 15 if I look back, I've been in the financial services industry in various capacities. I started this business in 2015, and prior to that, I had another registered investment advisory with the fellow that's now my senior portfolio manager, Daniel Dower. And prior to that, many years in the technology business management space. So let's see if we can get this to work. Yep, that works. Great. So a little bit about safe investments quickly, risk versus safety. I'm going to talk about the investment universe, very short because there's way too much to go into there. Q&A on investment universe. If you have any kind of questions about any of this, please go right ahead and ping them in there on your chat box on the right side of your screen. And I'll do my very best to answer those for you real time because I can, as I said, I can see your screen. So group dialogue. Should we have sponsor speakers? This is something I'd never even thought of when I was doing the Safe Investments LinkedIn group, and that is to have other people come in and speak on various topics. Obviously, they would be investment related. I mean, the fact is that as long as we're in a meetup group context, I probably won't be buying your dinner, but we could certainly have people come in and do that if that's of interest. It depends on what kind of topics you want and so forth. And then what kind of venues do you prefer? You can probably have somebody come in and present at Three Forks if you want, but that's going to come with some cost to it in terms of you're going to be followed up on via the phone and all of that. And personally, I don't care for any of that. The group mission, I want to touch on that at the end here. So let me keep moving right along. I don't want anybody to fall asleep as we move through this. I'm really, really interested in your feedback. This is my very first thing to do with this, and that is to try to scope this out and make the most sense of it for the people who attend. So first of all, well, I guess why safe investments? Well, safe investments was huge in 2009 when I started the business. That was pretty much where everybody wanted to go because a lot of people had lost as much as half of their assets. And safety was very important. So I crafted a business around these concepts. I was looking for things for which there was no reasonable scenario which in principle could be lost, that earnings would most likely exceed inflation, and alternatives that have a well-established and proven record in a proven business model. That was it. Fairly simple. Looking for those kind of things. Found a few, did some business, and built the relationship. Eventually started this business, which is much broader in scope. And that scope is registered securities. Primarily, I don't do much outside of registered securities. This little slide kind of gives you a broad overview of the investment universe with respect to registered securities. And that is traditional alternative investments, modern alternative investments, and traditional investments, stocks and bonds, obviously. We'll touch on that a little bit more as I move along. And then what are hedge funds? These fall into the alternative investments universe. Managed futures and distressed securities. I'm not going to try to define everything here, and I'm sure you'll be thankful for that. But if you have questions on any of these specifically, please ping it into your chat box, and I will try to respond to that. Private equity, commodities, and real estate. Those are kind of the things we think of. And on in the world of registered securities, staying out of the alternatives for a moment, these are things that the SEC has at least passed on the paper. They don't approve really of what you're doing one way or the other, but you have to meet certain documentary requirements, which are very expensive, and work for an investment banker. Someone knows how to get you there. But basically, what the stock world it's basically bonds and stocks. And stocks would be ownership or fractional ownership in a business, and bonds are debt, whether debt of the United States or a foreign country, or debt of a business. So classically, what we would talk about is risky or less risky. I'm not crazy about that term, because my view of it is that a lot of it comes to emotion, and I think safe is a word that fits emotion better than risk. Risk is something that you can put some numbers to. Safe, it's difficult to put numbers to, and it's very difficult to put numbers to the way people feel. So this is where you get into a real problem trying to assess someone's risk tolerance. And I have some pretty good tools for doing that. None of it's perfect, because it's just extremely hard to figure out how people are going to react when they're in distress. So what are we looking at here? This is a listing from the safer end of the world, which we would consider bonds to be safer, especially treasury bonds would be very safe. And by safe, we simply mean you're probably not going to get much in the way of return these days. There was a point there when it was negative return. It is in a lot of countries negative return, but you're not going to lose your principal either. And then less safe. Well, yeah, you can go into something highly speculative if you want to, into Bitcoin or something of that sort. So I don't tend to go there most of the time, but that's a place you can go. The kind of products we're looking at here, as I said, are treasuries on the very safe side, and these are actually classified as risk. We would classify this as the risk-free rate when you get down to the treasuries. Investment grade corporate bonds, junk bonds. These are become a little bit more risky. I don't know about the ETFs. They're as risky as the market is risky. The index ETFs, because they try to track things like the Standard & Poor's 500 or the Dow Industrial Average. Large cap U.S. stocks tend to be somewhat more safe, especially if they pay dividends, than small cap U.S. stocks. And then sector-specific funds that focus in a particular area, like tech or energy or whatever you want there. And then international stocks tend to be somewhat more risky, in part because that's an area that we just don't touch that much. So these would be the range of more or less traditional strategies for trying to grow your assets. And this would be the range for people that are looking for perhaps income or simply to protect their assets. And I certainly hope that everyone can hear me. I should have asked first, but I guess you would have disappeared by now. But if someone would please just send me a chat message real quick saying, hey, yeah, Vern, I hear you okay. I'll take a sip of coffee while you do. Oh, great. Thanks, Paul. So moving right along, I think. All right, here's another area, non-securities, I call it for lack of a better term. Basically, these are things that offer guarantees that are tied to other things. Securities generally don't offer guarantees unless you're a government entity. Government bonds obviously are backed by the government. CDs offer guarantees merely because they're bank products, and those bank products are, of course, regulated by the FDIC and guaranteed to a certain level. Insurance products offer guarantees to the extent that the insurance company is capable of supporting it. So guarantees are words you really don't use in the security side of things. You get a lot of trouble doing that. There are no guarantees there. But this is a world where you can go to get something that we might consider safer. and so they fit down in this part of the world. They also tend to be less liquid. CDs, of course, have penalties if you get out early, and a lot of the insurance products, like annuities, typically have large penalties if you get out early. Lots of other things in the investment universe. We're looking at derivatives based on an underlying financial asset. I mean, I think everyone remembers the disaster in 2008, 2009, when the mortgage backed securities mess came unhinged. That kind of thing can happen. And derivatives, in my sense, they're difficult to understand, very complicated quite often, and it's hard to know where you're going to go with those sometimes. Real estate, I mean, I like people that have rental homes. I think sometimes that makes sense if you're willing to put your own sweat into it. I consider that, of course, a small business. It's certainly not a passive income, and but that can make a lot of sense for a lot of people. And I have some clients that have rental homes and even larger rental investments. REITs, I don't have a problem with real estate investment trusts. I'm not crazy about non-traded REITs, simply because non-traded REITs are very illiquid and very hard to see what's going on inside. And there are lots of traded REITs that you can get into that are liquid. Uh, Oil leases, right? Typically, Reg D securities, private placements, and life settlements. Those have been around for a while. No longer are offered as a fractional ownership in the state of Texas. But they are available as Reg D securities. I think they're somewhat less attractive as a Reg D because, of course, you have the costs of filing the paper and everything for that. Um, I think I like this investment. I would encourage those of you that are in business for yourself, do the best job you possibly can, and this will be your best investment ever, and that is your own business, whether it's a sole proprietorship, LLC, S Corp, or whatever. As long as you can do a good job and you have a good business, it's a good place to invest your money. See, I told you this would be pretty quick. We're out here at what? Let me look. We're only about 15 minutes, and I'm ready to say, do you have any specific questions related to the universe of investing? And if not, we'll move along and we'll be done in just a few more minutes. I'm not hearing a lot of chiming in, so let's just move to the next slide. And that slide is all about discussion, dialogue. I'm very much interested in constructing a meetup group that meets the needs of people in the interests of people. I don't want to sit here and talk to myself. That's a huge waste of time. So I really, really would appreciate your input. A little on the mission. Well, obviously, I think education is part of it. Teaching people about the new stuff that's out there and the old stuff too, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding and not that much knowledge among most of the retail investors about how it all works. So we certainly can do that. Should we have sponsor speakers? And what's your thought on having somebody come into the group and perhaps talking about a particular product or annuities or whatever, and they buy us a really nice dinner? I mean, I'm always up for a good dinner. If that's something that's of interest to you, please, pipe in, send a little text message and let me know. I'm not crazy about that idea. I'd prefer to have a non-biased input on everything that we talk about, and I don't see a lot of people asking for that. Not too interested. Thanks, Paul. I agree. I don't mind having people come in if there's something that I can vet, as long as there's not going to be a hard pitch, but I'd rather not be obligated to them. And I think that's how you feel too. Any particular topics of interest to you that you'd like to have perhaps an expert come in and speak about, I'd appreciate it. If anything comes to mind, just please ping it in there. What kind of venues? I mean, last night we used the La Madeleine, which is an okay place. They have a nice quiet room with a thick door, and that seemed to work out pretty good. Everybody could come in and get their meal if they want to. I think we had it a little too early. In the future, I'll probably bump it out about a half an hour and start at 7:30. Might be more interested to hear from an actual investor talk about their experience in a particular asset class. I appreciate that. That sounds good, and I'll certainly, as they say, take that under advisement. I'll look into it. I'm not sure, as opposed to someone who's selling them. Right. Great input, Paul. I appreciate that. Changing the group name. Oh, yes. I think the Safe Investments name is wore out, and I'm really interested in changing that. I'm probably just going to change it to Understanding Investments because that's kind of where I want to go. I want to try to offer this as an educational venue where we can all gain something out of it and learn something out of it. And just look for me to go ahead and do that because I think that's the right thing to do. And the Safe Investments just doesn't fit anymore. And here are some ideas I can present on all of these. These are things that I'm very familiar with, and I can bring other people in for like an actual investor talking about their experience in an asset class. That sounds good, and we can just keep our eye out. If you have ideas and to things that you would like to see, such as Paul just mentioned, that would be great. I'd appreciate it. Send me a message, and we'll go for it. And I think we're about to wrap up. This is being recorded and I'm gonna post it. So if anybody wants to go, that came in late and wants to see the whole thing, it's difficult for me to imagine, but I guess somebody could want to see the whole thing. Let me know. Pretty much done at this point. So I appreciate your time. Let me see, we're done. Yep, not even one more slide. So thank you very much for giving me a part of your Friday, and I look forward to meeting you at one of the events in the future.